3, 2, 1. We're on the air.
I see a live sign on my screen.
Yeah,
Nice.
we're live. So
All right.
that's basically what we'll do. You know, we can once we're ready to go, we hit the go live. Then we know that we're recording, and then I hit stop broadcast, and we're done.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, this is really cool. So this is called Google Air?
Yeah, I guess it's Google Hangout Air.
Yeah, I don't know why I couldn't get on the other way. I had to use the link to get in.
Yeah, me too. Yeah.
Maybe we're computers.
Yeah,
I don't know.
So anyway, if you can also see on the left-hand side of your screen that if you wanted to do a desktop share, you can share your desktop. And question and answers, there's Q&A dialogue. So if I do this little Q&A, let's see what happens. Oh, the feature is disabled for some reason. What if I do a desktop screen share? If I say I'm going to share this screen right here, start screen share. I don't know if we wanted to show anything when someone's talking. You ultimately could then share your screen.
Oh,
See it?
No, present to everyone. You are screen sharing, presenting to everyone. Okay, so now you should be able to see the screen.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's the way the technology is going to work. I think it should work well. And then the idea is here too is as we're talking and we're having our dialogue, I'll add in later titles based upon the 7 different principles we need to incorporate.
Right.
And so I'll do that after, and I'll test it here in the next couple days before we do our live session to see what it's going to look like. But if we can all do exactly what Edro did, and that is type in underneath your dialogue where it's applicable, type in which illustration proposition of the 7 that your dialogue pertains to. And that will help me know where to put the banners based upon our dialogue.
Right. So, So should we go through the narrative and the dialogue?
Yeah. If we could use our next 30 minutes just to kind of type as we go and fill in the gaps where we need to on this whole dialogue.
Yeah.
Just so that we know, what the end goal is. So how are we going to end this dialogue? What's the end? Are we going to have like a resolution, or?
I think that we need to have some level of resolution. It might be a little bit of heated, and we might need the mediator to kind of jump in and, apply the different principles. But ultimately, at the end, I think we need to have some level of agreement. We may not all get what we want. We may not get Mr. Smith to agree to paying $300. We might all have to chip in, and some kind of happy medium.
Right. So there's also that, as we're demonstrating those principles, I don't know that we have to come full circle and get to an ultimate agreement on what the total solution is, and maybe that's how we demonstrate, that it's segmented and, you make minor accomplishments as you go throughout, and it doesn't necessarily mean that we have to wrap it up in this one session.
Good point. So yeah, but I think, do we want to not have a resolution at the end, or do we? I mean, we could do it either way, Mike. I mean, I think it'd be nice to know though what we want to ultimately how we want to end it. Especially, if we're only going to record like maybe 10 minutes, this 10 minutes discussion is going to go pretty quick.
Yeah,
I mean, I think it would easy. I mean, if we did come to a resolution, I don't know, maybe it would end up 30 minutes. So we can test it and see how it goes. See how long it takes us to run through our dialogue. Maybe use the next few minutes to type it up.
Let's talk through the dialogue real quick, make sure everybody's okay with it, and then my guess or the assumption is it's going to naturally play out, and then we'll know kind of which direction we want to go from there.
Good call.
Yeah. So I had just a general question too. I mean, I was reviewing the dialogue, and I feel pretty good about the whole premise of the argument and the setup. One thing for, I guess, you and I, Mike, as far as being the neighbors, before we begin, I just like to see maybe what you and I should should play into the dialogue in a sense of maybe should we have differing point of views, or should one of us be more hardline than the other, or I don't know, like how do you want to approach that maybe?
You know, I think that all depends on what we choose to slot into the dialogue slots here. So as it stands right now, there's the questions that are proposed by Mr. Brown, and then after that there's a phone call between the neighbor and Mr. Smith, and I think that's kind of where the first phase of this negotiation plays out, right? So the neighbor in that first conversation has to kind of convince Mr. Smith, or at least identify that, yes, there's an issue, it needs to be resolved, we're going to meet at the homeowners association meeting to discuss it.
Right.
And it's getting him to agree to that. Then after that, I think we can take it a couple different ways. It just depends on how aggressive or how confrontational we want to be.
Yeah. Okay.
I think
would you like
based
to
on the script right now, neighbor number 1 is supposed to be rude. So that's you, Mike. You're supposed to be
me.
rude.
Yep.
And
So
Carl, you're Mrs. Edwards, so you have to become a woman.
Okay.
And Carl, you can change it to Mr. or give you whatever name. By the way, we can even change the names to our own last names too if you want. I just tried to randomly put some names on here.
Yeah, I'm okay with Mr. Smith.
Yeah. I'm good. I'm good with playing a woman. It's okay.
Well,
Carl, I would really appreciate it if you got yourself a wig for the final meeting.
Yeah,
That'd be
please
hilarious.
do for the real one. Put on the wig and the makeup, please.
I mean, I can be Mrs. Edwards if you want, but I would like to hear Carl's voice, the Mrs. Edwards voice.
Oh.
I didn't realize we were going to have a Mrs. Edwards, so I can be Mrs. Edwards. I don't have to be my role. I can do something different if you want.
You can be your same role, just switch names.
It's all good. I don't mind. Yeah, I don't mind being a neighbor too. No worries. I'm happy to. Yeah, it's all good. Yeah.
So I'm hearing a couple of things. Actually, I was going to write them down. I'm hearing a couple of things. One, I thought I heard maybe there's an opportunity for Carl and Michael to sort of have a conversation, sort of, in the driveway. The two neighbors complaining and say, what are we going to do? Then they go to the neighborhood leader, Mr. Brown, and then Mr. Brown calls Mr. Smith to try to get him to go, or maybe the two neighbors try to get Mr. Smith to do something first. He doesn't do anything. They go to Mr. Brown, and then he tries to calm Mr. Smith down and get him to come to a neighborhood association meeting. So maybe that could be a potential introduction that would add a few more seconds to the dialogue.
I like it. That's how it kind of kicks off and how we find out about it.
Right. And then the other thing I'm hearing, or what I read, was that the people before the water line break also will have an issue if this doesn't get fixed. And right now it seems like our neighbors are behind the water line break. And so would a potential next step, maybe at the end of our scenario, or to extend it, would be that we would want to get neighbors involved from in front of the water line break to put more pressure on Mr. Smith.
Well, Jeannie, the people in front of the water line are only affected if he doesn't cap it off. So if
he doesn't, or he does?
If he does not cap it off. Oh. So if he does not cap it off, then the water will free flow into his yard, which means that the city won't put any water to it. If he caps it off, then anybody before him will get water, but nobody after him. The water won't flow through his property.
Oh, so that's another little nuance then. I didn't quite realize that.
But the people before, if he doesn't cap it off in a timely manner, the city won't send water, and the people before won't get water as they need it right now.
Mm-hmm.
So it's an extra little complication into it that maybe we don't want to get into, but it could get brought up in the discussion. Adds a little complexity to the timing. It means we got to rush, we got to hurry and come to a resolution. Otherwise, the people before won't get water if we don't cap it or if we don't extend it.
Right. Right. But he's probably willing to cap it off, isn't he?
Oh yeah, of course, because it won't really cost him any additional money. It's not going to prolong his swimming pool.
Right. So we really can't use them to, we can't use them as a leverage for additional pressure on him.
No, because I think if anything, it's going to make him want to hurry and cap it faster. That's exactly what he wants. He wants to cap it fast.
Yeah, yeah.
So that leverage would be not in our favor.
Okay, okay. Okay, cool. I misread that. Okay, fine. Okie dokie.
So maybe we can start. Unfortunately, I got to drop at the top of the hour. I got a hard stop at 7. But should we start typing? Maybe some of this upfront dialogue and then cruise through and fill in some gaps?
Yeah, sounds good.
Anybody want to volunteer to type in the initial dialogue between neighbors and Mr. Smith?
I don't mind.
Yeah.
If you guys want to talk, or go ahead. Who's that?
We can see you typing. Perfect.
Yeah.
Okay. Who was that just spoke, though? Do they want to type? I don't want to hog it if you don't want me to.
Oh no, I don't mind. Yeah, this is Carl. I don't mind helping too, Jenny. I can help capture some dialogue too if you'd like. No worries.
Okay. Okay, great. Okay, so the initial dialogue is we're going to go with the two neighbors meeting, sort of. Who is it? Mrs. Edwards and what's Michael's name?
I am Mr. Starts with a B. Benson.
Okay. So this is where you meet in the driveway and discuss Mr. Smith's debacle.
How did we find out about Mr. Smith's debacle? Maybe we need to start that off somewhere too.
Well, you said the pipe got cut off in Mr. Smith's backyard, right?
Yep.
So I think either Mr. Benson or Mrs. Edwards needs to be the next door neighbor of Mr. Smith.
Yeah.
And they noticed the flooded water, and now they're not getting water, and they found out day one.
Right.
I thought there was going to be a narration in the beginning to kind of give the background, right?
Right.
Yeah, so maybe we just start off with that. So just someone's going to read the narration, and then we start negotiation. We found out about the situation. That's a good point, Edro.
Right. So here's the negotiation. Excuse me. Here's the negotiation. Oh, you guys are partly not seeing my screen. I don't know why. I'm thinking that you
we can see whatever you type. We can see whatever you type.
I'm looking at what you're typing.
I can see
Yeah,
it.
but at the top of the so here's the scenario that I've just highlighted that we sent in.
Yep.
Right.
I see you highlight it.
So this is kind of the introduction, and so then maybe we do say here that Mrs. Edwards, so I was calling her the nosy neighbor, notices that Mr. Smith's working in the yard and then sees that there's a big water break.
Or I think the most obvious thing that the reason why is because they were scheduled to get water on a specific day, but it was not delivered to them.
Mm-hmm.
So because they didn't get their water, they're calling the city, why didn't you send me water? And they're saying, well, we understand that there's a breakage at a certain address, which is Mr. Smith. And so maybe that neighbor then goes over to Mr. Smith's house, sees that he's building a swimming pool, and gets nosy to find out what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
All right, I'm okay with that scenario.
Yep.
So I think the context needs to be in that narration, and then the dialogue that we're typing out right now needs to be the neighbor introducing himself to Mr. Smith or talking to Mr. Smith casually regarding the work that's going on and the cause and effect of the line breaking and now I don't have water.
Yep. So that's part of the narration. Is that what you're saying, Mike?
What I'm saying, yeah, is all the context we just said is the narration,
Mm-hmm.
and then the conversation or the dialogue that we're typing out right now should be the like that introduction between Mr. Smith and the first neighbor, and the conversation that ensues around. So what type of work do you have going on? I understand you had a water break. Something to that effect.
So I think, Jenny, she's saying that starting where you have Mrs. Edwards goes next door to Mr. Smith to find out. Right there is where, okay, now the dialogue's going to start. That conversation. You're walking over there, now you're going to start a conversation finding out information from Mr. Smith.
Got it.
What occurred, dialogue begins
Yeah.
at the front door.
So Mrs. Edwards to Mr. Smith,
Yep.
right?
Right.
What are they saying?
Okay.
What does Mrs. Edwards say?
I think it's so. Mrs. Edwards is the one who's did not get the water, right? Am I
Right.
right on? Okay. So yeah, so she'd go over there and say, hey, hi, Mr. Smith, Mrs. Edwards, this is Mrs. Edwards. How are you today? I noticed that I did not receive any water today on my scheduled day, and when I called the city, they informed me that there was a break at your home. Just wanted to check in with you about that and see if you've notified the city to come out and repair the break, or if you knew what happened. I don't know. That's good.
Yeah, perfect.
Nice job, Carl.
No.
Jenny's typing fast.
She's a good typer.
Okay, so, I mean, spelling mistakes, but that's fine. Okay.
You're good, yeah.
Okay, so then Mr. Smith's reply.
Yeah, so I guess I'll say something to the extent of, yeah, I had the pool guys come in early this week to put in a pool, and apparently there was a water line there, and it broke. And I think this is where probably I want to say I'm just thinking of just capping it off, and bury it under the pool. But at this point, I still don't know that this, how this is impacting the neighbors, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Probably not. Yeah.
Okay, so then maybe Mrs. Edwards responds back to Mr. Smith saying,
Yeah.
wow, that's interesting, however you want.
Yeah, I'll say, wow, that's, I'm sorry to hear about that you've hit the water main with your pool. At the same time, I really have these beautiful fruit trees in the back. I've got orange trees and lemons, and gosh, I love my trees. And I'd love to get that repaired. I mean, it's something that instead of capping it off, I really prefer if it's repaired. Is there something that you can do or the city can do to help repair it? I know that you're putting in the pool, so maybe the contractor, maybe they can repair that for us?
I think part of this dialogue, too, it needs to be very clear to Mr. Smith, if you do not repair it, none of us other neighbors will get water.
Yeah. I'm thinking that, yeah. Should I say that now, probably?
Yeah, I would say, my concern is that if it's not repaired, that I'm not, and none of the other neighbors down the street are going to have access to water.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I totally agree. Yeah, if it's not repaired, not only will my fruit trees die, but nobody else in the neighborhood will be able to have water in their yard either. So it's really important to me to have it be repaired. Yeah.
Okay.
So it sounds like the next line is somewhere Mr. Smith needs to say something that's going to cause us to get together in a further meeting.
How about something as simple as Mr. Smith saying, you know, I know there's a neighborhood association meeting on Thursday night. Let's meet then, or whatever. We can talk more about it. But wait, we want the dialogue after this to be. I guess it's important that we know what context comes next, right? Because we were going to have one of the other neighbors try and call and persuade Mr. Smith to come to the meeting.
Yeah.
What if he says, you know, I don't have it. What if at this point he says, you know, I don't have any fruit trees. I can't. The contractor's not going to pay for it, and I don't have the money to repair this. I just want my pool. You know, something like that. I just want my pool to be done. You know, I just maybe like that. I don't know. Is that good or?
Yeah, I think that works. You know, I just didn't even know.
I don't want to do with it. Yeah.
Yeah, something like, you know, I didn't even know there was an irrigation line going through my property, and I guess I can say that, you know, I'm sorry that, you know, it's impacting you guys, but, you know, I would imagine it would be expensive to fix it, and, you know, all I want to do is just put in a pool.
Right.
So, you know, kind of subtly say that, you know, I'm not gonna do anything with it, right, about it.
Yeah. Because I think that kind of sets the tone for trying to persuade him and get him to the meeting, right?
Right.
Yeah, and I think, you know, Mr. Edwards next, you know, punches Mr. Smith in the face, right? Yeah, there's a brawl first, then the meeting.
Does Mrs. Smith have like a umbrella with her or something? She starts hitting him over the head, or
Right.
The lady with the purse.
Yeah.
So I don't think we have Mr. Smith come to the meeting. I don't think he's going to show up, right? Is that the intent? So us neighbors get together and come up with our negotiation strategy?
Yeah, because in this scene, you know, Mr. Smith basically said, you know, I'm not going to do anything about it. Now the rest of the neighbors is going to get together and talk about it, right?
Yeah, so maybe this is where Mrs. Edwards says, well, let me talk to the other neighbors and see if we can come up with an alternative or to help you out or something, you know. Mention that we'll meet together and come back and see what we can, if there's anything us neighbors can do.
What the association can do?
Yeah, so exactly.
Should she invite him to the association meeting?
Either way.
Or are you going to call a special meeting? Are you calling a special meeting, Mr. Brown?
Yeah, I'll call the meeting. I think Mrs. Edwards now will then communicate to me, Mr. Brown, saying, hey, would you mind calling a meeting together? Here's the situation. Mr. Edwards calls Mr. Brown, says, here, this is what I found out.
Maybe what you're describing, Scott, can be another narration, like, you know, from going from scene 1 to scene 2, there's going to be a breakage, right? So that's where you can kind of insert a narration and say, you know, so Mr. Edwards, you know, there's Mr. Edwards' last line, then the narration goes, here's what happened after this conversation, and we go to scene 2.
Good call.
Right? So this is the association meeting.
Good idea. Okay. Perfect. And then we jump right into the Mr. Brown, hello neighbors. Thanks for coming out. He broke when he was digging a new swimming pool in his backyard. As a result, if not fixed, none of you will be able to get irrigation anymore. How important is receiving irrigation to each of you?
Okay, just wait. So I'm still in the narration scene 2. Mrs. Edwards, so the narrator is going to say, at this point, Mrs. Edwards calls Mr. Brown to tell us what is happening with the irrigation line, and Mr. Brown, the neighborhood association president, calls a group of neighbors together to discuss a negotiation strategy. Is that right?
discuss the situation and how to resolve it, a negotiation strategy. Solve it.
Okay. I just want to. We'll all fix it. We'll all fix our own little stuff up here. Okay.
Yeah.
So. Okay.
Okay, so I could call him. I could call him up and say, hi, Mr. Brown. Just wanted to give you a call. Per our, as we talked the other day, I'm pretty concerned about the water break, and we actually conveniently we actually have a meeting coming up, a neighborhood meeting, HOA meeting. Is that what it is? That's what we're gonna do. Kind of an HOA meeting. And I'd like to really bring this up and add it to our agenda, and I'd like to talk to you about that because I'd like for you to come and attend the meeting so that we can further discuss with our neighborhood to make sure that the line gets fixed. It
Carl,
sounded like you were,
I think we can definitely do it that way. I think the way that we were proposing prior was just have that part of a narration, so you wouldn't have to say.
Oh, okay. Okay, sorry. Yep, sounds good.
Basically, the narration would state what you just said, and then the next scene would be us at the association.
Okay,
Right.
gotcha. Sorry.
Oh, okay. That's okay. And we could do it either way. If you think your woman's voice can last that long.
Man.
Ouch. That was a good one.
Okay.
All right, so I thank everybody for coming out. And then the question I ask is, how important is receiving irrigation to you? So just trying to get maybe some real brief dialogue here. Maybe when the other neighbor says, "Hey, if I don't have irrigation, none of my trees are going to get water. I'm willing to help chip in or something."
Yeah, Mike, I think this is when you fly off the handle.
This is when I lose it.
There you go.
My azaleas are. I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
So I don't know. What's my water emergency? Do I have something, or is it just my flowers dying?
I think you could say that you have a prize-winning fruit tree that you're just, so upset about.
What is it? My fruit cocktail tree is. All right.
My margaritas aren't going to be the same if I don't get my limes this year.
Exactly. You have a lemon tree and you don't get limoncello anymore.
Or, so, let's see. I'm trying to think. If this is like I want there to be a monetary impact, right? Because we need to have some leverage, because he really doesn't care if my fruit trees die.
Well, to you, Mike, your monetary piece is if you don't get irrigation, you don't have sprinklers. You have no alternative way to bringing water to your trees. You would physically have to spend thousands of dollars bringing out new pipelines.
So I think that's the whole point, right? If he doesn't do this, then he needs to pay for the installation. Either fixes the line where it's at, or we come to some sort of arrangement of how we fix the line. Or I'm taking him to court because now I have to pay for alternative for the cost of installing the pipe myself and any potential loss in property value. So that's what it comes down to.
Yeah.
Kenny, you need to use more exclamation points.
Okay.
So maybe after you get all heated up there, Mike, then that's why I say, okay, Mike, to avoid having to take him to court, to avoid these situations, how much would you be willing to pitch in to get this line fixed? And I could even state that I understand that the cost of fixing this line is $1,500, and then find out from you how much
cost you just to get an attorney on a retainer.
Yeah. So that's where we try to mitigate.
I like that. So I would say something like, the $300 to me would be a small price to pay to avoid having to take somebody to court.
Yeah.
Do you think it should be more than $300? Do you think maybe because somebody could just say, hey, it's so important to me, I'm just going to pay you right now, I don't know, just a thought.
Yeah, so if you wanted a real life situation, this happened in our neighborhood, and the cost was about $1,500 to fix the line. So we could, I'm just throwing a number out there, $1,500. But maybe, Mike, I just first state before telling you it's going to cost $1,500. Say, hey, how much would you be willing to pay to have this fixed? And you might just give a number. Hey, it's worth to me as much as $1,000. I'll pay up to $1,000 out of my pocket to have this fixed, not have to go to court. Or do you want me to just bring in the fact of, oh, we got a quote, or the other neighbor to say, hey, I understand from the city in a discussion with them, the city will come out and fix it, but it's going to cost, we're going to have to pay on our own, and it will cost $1,500. Or maybe that's the narration. We have a narrator tell us that. I don't know. Ideas.
So I like the idea of us, incorporating this into the dialogue. Mr. Brown is the homeowners association guy, right? So what if he says, I know from past experience that any repairs to the irrigation line cost approximately $1,500.
Yep. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So I think as a team of, 4 people, we need to decide, okay, are we willing to pay for all this? Is a kind of worst case scenario, us on our own paying for it, if Mr. Smith does not agree to pay his portion.
So how many neighbors are there that this impacts in our dialogue? 3?
For sake of conversation, yeah. There's probably others that we could include, but
right.
We
We
seem
could
to be
have dragged this out a little bit, though, you guys, because really this is like only 5 minutes right now, don't you think?
Well, we can embellish it a little bit too. We don't necessarily have to read the script, but we can test it. I think it's going to be at least 10 minutes based
You
upon
do?
how much we have. Yeah, by the time
So
you do
are
the
we
narration.
Right. Are we hitting the points?
Yeah.
So
Here's more dialogue that we haven't got to yet.
Right. I mean, this is all set up still, right? I mean, once Mr. Smith meets with the association, that's where the kind of a meat of this video is gonna come in, I would think. Or are there any points we can hit early on?
Well, I think we're hitting right now on things like linkages and being, there's structural similarities, chaos within the negotiation. So we've already hit on 3 of these points. I think uncertainty and ambiguity, I don't know how we want to try and illustrate that.
Well, it's uncertain how Mr. Smith is going to react to our proposal.
Right.
Right.
Right. So number 2, chaos, and I'm looking at the so chaos of negotiation. Negotiations exhibit classic nonlinear patterns of interaction. This is where I would see Mrs. Edwards calling everybody in the neighborhood. I mean, isn't that kind of a thing where they're calling everybody? Mr. Brown's getting several people calling him from all different directions, and then all of a sudden, it's just, wait a minute, we need to have a neighborhood meeting.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Yeah, I like that.
Walk around with a petition.
Yeah.
Is that? I mean, I'm just saying, is that how we would see that?
I like it. So, and maybe that's one of those little flash-up windows that Scott includes as we talk about the upcoming meeting, right? So in the narration, we say, what is it? Mr. Edwards calls Mr. Brown to tell him, and he calls a group of neighbors together to discuss the situation. This can be where that window comes up during your narration to say, order and chaos. This is how we're able to resolve it, bring it together in a more organized manner in order to resolve the problem.
Mm-hmm.
Are you following that, Scott?
Yeah, part of the narration before we start the meeting. Is that what you're saying, Mike?
Yeah, I was thinking we could call it out there.
Yep, the narrator saying, okay, because of the chaos situation, we're calling a meeting to organize the community, the members of the neighborhood, and then we come up. The purpose of the meeting is to come up with our proposal, understand our concerns. So that can be fairly brief dialogue in that meeting, and then more meat of it's now when we approach Mr. Smith with our proposal. So what other dialogue? Okay, so now we're in the meeting. We've got dialogue between me and Mrs. Edwards. Miss Edwards kind of blows up. After Miss Edwards blows up, I say, okay, would you be willing to pay this amount? And then maybe right after Mr. Brown president, you have Mrs. Edwards and others, so we can all kind of speak up to agree. Yeah, okay, no, I'd be willing to go with that. I could pay $300 to $375. Play my portion. So you have a little dialogue under that section, Jenny.
Yeah, right here.
Right. Next line down, Mr. Brown, president. Yeah, right in there. No, and then that's going to be Miss Edwards.
Oh, this?
That you can delete. What is relationship with that whole thing? We can delete. Okay, and then before there, right before that one, we're going to say Mrs. Edwards. Going to say, okay, yeah, I'm willing to pay my portion. They can embellish it a little bit, and then next line down, other neighbor number 2.
Mr. Benson.
Mr. Benson says, yeah, I'm willing to pay my portion too.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, then Mr. Brown says, okay, well, when's the best time for us to meet with Mr. Smith to talk to him about our proposal?
Right.
Now, the question is, do we all go approach Mr. Smith together, or how do we want to go into the next
I think
narration?
we already have it set up kind of as a phone call, right? So that was
I was thinking, when we videotape this, how that would. I mean, I can do this, but we still have everybody on the screen, right? So I don't know if we want to do that phone call.
That works. No, yeah, we can all be showing that we're on the phone, and
Yeah.
I like that.
That one.
Okay. So that dialogue through phone call. Maybe have a little narration between Mr. Brown and the date. So
Right.
the narrator comes in again to say, okay, a narrator states a teleconference phone call has been scheduled with Mr. Smith and the neighbors to discuss the proposal.
Well, so I guess I'm a little bit confused. So I think, are we going to do this all via phone call, or are we going to do it at the neighborhood association meeting? Because we have right now it's set up to take place where the negotiation would take place at the association meeting. Is that right?
Yeah.
I thought that this phone call was to just tell Mr. Smith to come
Just to get him to
come to the meeting.
Oh,
Right.
okay. Okay, then it's not proposal, Jenny. It's been scheduled.
So I think we're making it too complicated. Let's just have the narrator say, Mr. Benson called Mr. Smith and convinced him, in order to convince him that it was necessary for him to come talk to the neighbors about a proposal or risk potential legal action.
Okay, good.
Yeah. That works.
Well,
I like
that'll get Mr. Smith to come to the meeting.
Right. I think it accomplishes both things, and we don't have to spend a bunch of time on it.
Yep.
Is the narrator saying that, or should that be a dialogue?
It's narrator. Just say it, narrator. I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe you want to say it. What do you want to do, Mike?
I don't care either way. I'm happy saying it. I'm just thinking rather than spend another 10 minutes writing out that back and forth conversation, we could just say Mr. Smith convinces him to come to the meeting by threatening him with legal action, and that's how we move on into the actual negotiation.
Yeah, that's good.
Okay. Okay, so then I say it is now 2 weeks later. At the right.
Let me see if I can buy me 15 more minutes. Just a second.
It is now 2 weeks later at the meeting. Trees are dying, and the neighbors and patience is wearing thin.
Yeah. And Mrs. Edwards has a couple of pit bulls that she might want to introduce to Mr. Smith. You know.
Right. Okay.
It's okay.
We got to keep it a little bit. Yeah, that's fine. We could have the narrator saying, and there's dogs barking, growling in the background.
Yeah.
Okay, but there should be a little bit of something going on. I mean, we can't make it too cordial, otherwise it's just totally boring.
Right.
Yeah.
So we bring in some candor. Just have fun with it as we talk.
Yeah.
Yeah. I have a dog. I can have him bark.
I'll bring in my kids.
Yeah.
Barking.
So is this Mrs. Edwards' line? I told him to have the lines identified before he dug the pool.
Yeah, that's where I say my 2 bits.
Oh, this is you? Is your okay. Okay.
So Mr. Benson is the next door neighbor to Mr. Smith, right?
He is a neighbor to Mr. Smith. I think we said that Edwards was the next door neighbor.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, got it.
Yeah, but he lives in the same HOA.
Right.
Right.
Okay, so my next door neighbor brings her pit bull. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Okay, then Mr. Smith replies to Mr. Brown's suggestion that he deflects to the city, who thinks he should pay for the damages.
Right. So the gist of the line is basically, I don't want to pay for it, and so I'm kind of taking a guess that, am I correct that the city used to or still does own the line? If it's a public line, the city should pay to fix it. And then, Jenny, you're the city official, right?
Well, yeah, I don't have to be, but I just thought since I'm the narrator or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Should I be Mrs. Edwards, though? I mean, I'm happy to switch that around.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, doesn't matter, Jenny. That's cool. Yeah, whatever you'd like.
It probably makes more sense, don't you think, guys?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So this is you, Carl.
Okay. Sounds good.
Is Carl the mayor?
He's just a city official. He's a city water person, utilities person.
Okay.
Your public works.
Yeah.
Sure.
You call it SRP over here.
Yeah.
Salt River Project. It's our utility provider.
Yeah, so I could just explain how the water, just how we have it there, how the water is coming into the boundary line of the development. We're just responsible for that portion of the line, and then so is the precedence here that the neighborhood that they would maintain and operate the actual line within the HOA, and that's really their responsibility. We're just responsible for the portion up to the neighborhood. Is that correct? Is that what happened in your case, Scott?
Yeah, let's see. You would, oh yeah, the city would only bring it to the neighborhood, exactly.
Okay.
And
Perfect.
all you do is service the line to the neighborhood. Once it gets in the neighborhood, it's up to the neighbors to take care of it. And
Yeah.
you just provide the service to sending the water down the line, and that's what neighbors pay for. They pay for that service to get the water.
Got it.
We can also say that maybe this is it's an old legacy type line too, or something like that.
Yep, that's how it is in our neighborhood right now. Our neighborhood used to be a big orange orchard, citrus orchard, and so the farmers used irrigation. And so when the people built their houses, they continued to use the irrigation lines, but they're so old and outdated that the city won't service them anymore.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
So, Carl, you can fix that up. Okay.
Yeah. No worries.
And so this is Mr. Smith being unreasonable.
Right, so that's a little bit long line, but here what I try to illustrate is the prop 4, as you can see. So I'm trying to add sort of multiple dimensions to what I'm saying, right? So link the other negotiations in that if I need to change my plan, I got to deal with my contractor and I got to get a new one. So that's the other negotiations, and a past, present, and the future. That as the dimension to, I already have a plan for the Memorial Day. People are coming in, so, I can't just, go ahead and fix it and not have the pool ready because I have people coming. So that's the kind of a multiple dimensions within this situation.
That's good. Okay.
Okay, so do we come to a resolution, or do we just leave it open? Let's see, what's the next part? Pipes to neighborhood number 1, negotiate to upset because several trees irrigate. Is that already been discussed, neighbor number 2? Can that be removed? Or is there show a little bit more frustration here?
So I don't know that we need to hammer that neighbor 2 piece again. It might be best if we talk about if we start shifting into like the back and forth, getting down to the agreement, right?
Right,
Yep.
and just a suggestion. I think if we try to get to a resolution through dialogue, it's going to be a long video, right? Maybe we'll do it up to wherever we feel comfortable, and they make sure that we hit all 7 points, and then after that we can in narration basically explain here's what happened afterwards and here's how it ended, so that if we want to have a resolution, we'll explain that in the narration, but we don't actually work it out in a dialogue.
So so one of the points that we need to get on is negotiations take place between representatives of groups. What if we, adding to the dimension here, what if rather than him saying, I'm having all my family come into town for Memorial Day, what if he's going out of town for Memorial Day and is going to be gone for a little while?
Oh, there
and
you
then
go.
he says, I'm out of town, I'm not going to be here to take care of it, but my wife or somebody else is going to be here, and I can, have her help discuss this through or whatever, something like that.
Then it could be, maybe I'd be happy to be a representative saying, Mr. Brown says, okay, then I'll represent our HOA to work out a solution with your wife and have Mr. Smith agree that if we can resolve this while he's gone, then he would be willing to proceed with the resolution. And then the narrator or me and his wife could say, okay, we've agreed as a community to pay for this and have it fixed. We have a contractor that's willing to come. Do you agree to allowing us to come on your property on next week and get this fixed? then it's done. You know, the negotiation's over. Me and his wife, the emotion's out of it. Me and his wife have come to an agreement, or his son, whoever, and it's done. You know, it's more of an abrupt kind of a solution or a agreement, but at least it closes it and says, okay, now the neighbors are happy. We're all willing to pay $300, whatever it is, and we came a solution.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I think that's good. I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing on this page, but I think it's good.
Perfect.
So what would Mr. Smith like? So we've got to rewrite this, right, to say he's out of town for Memorial Day weekend?
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, actually, I have to be away before the Memorial Day weekend, right? Because the Memorial Day weekend is when the party is going to be. Because
Yeah,
my wife would have to negotiate with the neighborhood association. Well, I guess it doesn't really matter. You know, I picked the Memorial Day weekend because you know the meeting was on the 16th, and I thought it was kind of timely. But I mean, yeah, it doesn't really matter when it is.
Right. So, okay, we're going to lose Scott here in a minute.
Yeah.
You guys, so this can be. So, okay, thanks, Scott.
Mr. Brown says maybe, or the narrator summarizes it, but otherwise basically saying Mr. Brown represents the HOA and offers a makes some HOA will chip in repair man have fixed come next week and people so that will that be agreeable? And then Mr. Brown's son says yes.
Okay. So, okay, so just to be clear then, so we can wrap up, we need to review this, but we also need to make sure that we're addressing all of these 7 points, right? And identify where the points.
Yeah. I'm thinking those might be part of the blur, you know, part of the banners that appear as well. Maybe we could have, you know, that way it kind of identifies the points briefly in the banner. What do you guys think about that?
Yeah, and I think the way we can do that using this shared document would be to highlight the sections in the script where it's addressing those things, and in our comment bubbles say this is the prop 1, this is prop 2.
So what we can do
like
with
this
editing,
one does.
yeah, just exactly.
Right. So we just have to go through and make sure it's often represented by many negotiators.
Yep, just as
So-
Edro's done already, just put which proposition it applies to in your dialogue, and then I'll use
Yeah.
that to add captions afterwards to the video.
Yep.
Great.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. So when are we meeting next? Are we meeting on Saturday?
Well, what works better for you guys? Is Friday night better or Saturday morning? I can meet. I'd be happy to meet at 8 o'clock Arizona time Saturday if that's better for you. Or
Either
Friday
way.
night.
I'm good with any of them.
I would
why don't-
prefer. I would prefer Friday night or 8 a.m. Saturday.
Okay.
Mike, any preference?
I can meet both times.
Why don't we do it Friday night and make sure that we get it?
Hmm.
And if we don't get it Friday night, so that we have Saturday morning to kind of wrap it up.
Yeah. Good
Okay.
idea. What day do we have to turn it in? Is it Sunday by midnight?
Yeah, we have Sunday.
Okay. Yeah, I kind of like your idea of maybe Friday night, just to kind of knock it out. And if we have to re-record or do some type of a, it kind of gives Saturday as kind of a backup if something happens,
All right. And Scott, you have to edit it, right?
Yeah, it shouldn't take me too long, but a couple hours I'll have it all finished up.
Okay.
So, okay, how late is too late for Friday? Or how early is too early? We do 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock Friday, so you can still have an evening. But I know, Edro, that's going to be like, what, 10 o'clock your time if we did 7 o'clock?
Yeah, I'm okay actually. Cause my kids go to bed at 8, so anytime after 8 is fine. And I'm up until late, so.
Jenny,
So-
how about yours?
Yeah, I'm good. Anytime after 5 Arizona time's fine with me.
And
Mike, Carl?
I'm usually not quite available until 6:30, 6 o'clock Arizona time.
Okay.
Why don't we start at 7 Arizona time then?
Yeah,
Okay.
That works. So
I'm good with
my
that.
thought is, that's perfect. We'll do 7 o'clock Arizona time. I'll send out a new updated link to this recorded session. And my thought is, first, before I hit the record button, we do a quick run-through before recording it.
Yeah.
And just see how it flows, how long it takes, and then we'll hit the record button. So hopefully 15, 20 minutes, we'll do our practice round. 20 minutes into it, then we can hit the record button.
The great news about all the dialogue we just had is that we recorded all of it. So if anybody forgot anything, it's available for review.
Yeah, here I go. Stop broadcast.